welcome to Anything Bagel. I'm Liz.
And I'm Danny.
And this is a podcast where we talk about,
well, anything.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Anything Bagel.
Hi.
Hi. We're glad you're here with us today. If you have a topic that you would like us to cover, remember to put it in the comments below. And we would love for you to share our podcast with anybody that you think would enjoy it or get something out of it. So please do that as well. And if you subscribe, you can get these sent like right to your YouTube or Spotify. Well, we are going to jump right in, and Danielle's going to draw a topic out of the hat. Oh, here we go.
I like when it's my turn. Historical figures. I kind of like those.
Okay. And let's see here. I wonder if we should, well, you have your phone there. I was going to say, I wonder if we should like look up like a historical figure, or maybe we should just talk about historical figures that we know.
Yeah, or
that have like made an impact on us.
Yeah, in our lives.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see where this goes.
Yeah. Who wants to go first?
I was just watching a movie the other night, speaking of historical figures, and actually it was around the time that Nelson Mandela was elected president after he got released from prison. And actually it was about Desmond Tutu. Oh. And he had him work on, I can't remember, it was some kind of a committee that they came up with after that to try to bring reconciliation. I think the word reconciliation was in that, something reconciliation committee. But it was a rather interesting movie. I don't really know that much about Desmond Tutu. And I've read part of Nelson Mandela's book, The Long Road to Freedom. But yeah, it's quite the history there. And I love that when he was released from prison, because he was in prison for like 40 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And when he was released from prison, people would ask him, aren't you bitter and hateful or whatever? And he said, you know what? I'm not going to carry that with me out of here. I'm free now. And I want to be free from those things and not carry resentments and bitterness around, because that's just poison for ourselves. Usually it doesn't have a whole lot of effect necessarily on the other person.
Yeah.
But it can definitely have an effect on us. But that was a interesting movie and interesting, history. Let's see. I also watched one on a movie about young Queen Victoria. She was the Queen of England. And I think she was
That's probably good.
Yeah, I think she was the longest reigning queen up to the point where Queen Elizabeth, I think, surpassed her or whatever. But that was also, interesting, because her father had died, and there was this gentleman that was with her mother that was trying to like take over things and felt that she was too young to be queen, but she stood her ground.
Yeah.
She was a strong woman who said, you know what, I will learn and I will figure it out. And I think they call that, like, if you don't take your throne right away, because her uncle had to pass away in order for her to become queen. Regency or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
And she said, nope, I'm gonna. But yeah, that was interesting. They had 9 kids, and they had 9 children, and their heritage or their lineage, whatever you want to call that, is in like so many different countries, like royal lineage from those 9 kids.
Random facts again.
Random facts.
You know a lot of things.
I don't know. I read, watch movies.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that are coming to mind. One I want to read, and I don't know her name, but I need to look it up. She was on the Rachel Hollis podcast, but her mom and dad were friends of Saddam Hussein. He wrote about it. And I said friends in quotes because they were forced to be his friends. You're not that way. this family was his connection to the outside world, and like when he would go out in public, they were his like to kind of prove that he was like a normal, regular person. Those guys. And she grew up her whole life until a certain age. Whenever she found out, she never knew. Her parents didn't want them to know because it's just more dangerous and that kind of thing. So that's a historical figure I want to look into. But my other one is Laura Ingalls Wilder, because I feel like I just refer to that like generation so much, and I'm like, Laura Ingalls Wilder can do it, I can do it.
That's right. It's that
Like life's not
subtler,
yeah.
that subtler period. We have somebody that we work with, and I won't say her first name, but we always call her so-and-so on the prairie because she is like that as well. And I always say, speaking of that time, is that there is a reason that God had me born not at that time. And that is because I think I would be too big of a wimp to like make it through some of the stuff they made it through. The winters, because I don't like being that cold.
Yeah.
Just the fear of the unknown when they traveled out west for the first time. And you have no idea what you're getting into as far as, just all kinds of things that they ran into. And what a different life. Different life. We kind of talked about that on our one podcast about being mindful, like when we were eating and that kind of a thing. Yeah. And they were much more mindful of things at that time and took their time. But yeah, I read all those Little House on the Prairie and Little House in the Big Woods.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, there's several of those. Yeah. I read too a book a long time ago. I can remember like bits and pieces of it, but it was about Sacagawea, Indian that traveled with the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Well, that's probably so good. I want to read that.
Yeah. And that again, just what to be brave enough to go on, to go along on something like that is beyond my.
I read a book about a lady doctor in that kind of era, which is not very common.
Right.
And it was so good because it was just she just talked about things she'd seen, how she was treated. And then from my perspective, the way medicine was, I just can't believe how it used to be. That was really good. I'm trying to think of like a historical figure that
kind of jumps out at you.
Yeah. I could talk about a really random one.
Okay.
Tupac Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I read his biography,
Uh-huh.
and it was so well written. I cried, and I loved it. But it was, I was more touched by his mom, because his mom was part of the Black Panther, and I just loved that the education that was behind it. It was written really unbiased. It was just, this is the way it was. And the way that Tupac was portrayed in his life, when really he was trying to do so good. And he paid for a little boy's funeral who died from cancer. He went to see him, and all of the organizations that he started were just to help people in general and anything get out of poverty, follow their dreams.
Yeah.
It was so well written. Everybody should read.
Yeah.
It was good.
I know this, there are so many people that I don't know anything about or enough about. And, when you think about, just how many historical figures, and reading books is, I think, the best way, but there's some good movies, out there too. And there's lots of, my husband has read tons and tons of, what would be, nonfiction books about, the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War and the Vietnam War. And there's just so much history there that we don't know.
Yeah, I wish they would. They only teach about so little in school.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I wish there was more variety. I
Yeah.
guess it's always the same people all the time, and not that they're not important, but I feel like maybe it should be like a larger.
Right. Maybe they should draw names out of a hat
Exactly.
of all
That's
historical
actually what
figures,
should.
and that is the ones that they would teach on.
I
So,
agree.
yeah.
That would be.
Now, Queen Elizabeth, I watched the series of The Crown, and she also was like, devoted her life obviously
Yeah.
to that, and whatever people think of a monarchy or again, monarchy or not. The part, when her dad was still king, and she was, I think she was on like a safari in Africa with Prince Philip.
Yeah.
And I think
they do
they were like on their honeymoon or something like that. They hadn't been together very long anyway. And, they were off on this adventure, and she was very lighthearted and playful and all that kind of thing. And while they were gone, at least how it's depicted in The Crown, again, not everything here is factual. This is factual based on what I watched on The Crown, that the night her father died, she woke up that morning. She's the Queen of England.
Yeah.
And like her whole world changed. I mean, it went from being, this is my life and I can
love my life
and even though she was raised to be a future monarch, her playfulness kind of left, and she just very serious.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, what a change to have to go through overnight, and you have to kind of let go of your ability to just do what you want and be at the service of your country and have the eyes watching on you all the time. I think about that with like Prince William and like their kids.
Yeah.
George, is he the oldest of their three?
I think so. But,
And you think that, he's being brought up to be the future king. That's a lot of pressure.
I don't like to use the term weird. It's just we don't fail up with that.
Right. It's different.
Yeah. It's very fascinating what they have to go through. And just I feel like a lot of us are a little more open to or enlightened by that because the whole Meghan Markle thing kind of just
and
brought a lot of things to light of like what you have to go through to even be royal. It's just a lot different than even I know we elect a president and they're important, but it's not like royalty to me.
Mhm.
At least it just seems different to me, but that's because they have the whole family. It's like never out of the family.
Right.
Like it's
that lineage and and then you have, like Prince Harry who stepped away. Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Because, he wanted to live his life different.
Yeah.
And
and I like that. I just
mhm.
just because it's uncommon and it's controversial, but
I was thinking that about Prince William and Kate's, like their second and third children, because they are going to be like Harry was.
Yeah.
Not the king.
Yeah.
And if like maybe when they grow up, if they'll have some kind of a relationship with their Uncle Harry, because he'll, be able to relate to them. Because I know in watching The Crown and how they portrayed Princess Margaret, who was Elizabeth's younger sister, that she struggled with that of not being the one sometimes.
Well,
sometimes it was good.
It's completely different.
Yeah. Sometimes she liked, I think, the fact that she didn't get the attention, but also she wanted to feel important as well and wanted to have a role in things. And
that does have to be hard because they're really, especially in that scenario, there is a clear, like, this isn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to, like the firstborn is going to get trained in lined up and you're just not going to get that same attention. So,
and how do you come to a place of acceptance of that?
Yeah.
Because if you don't come to a place of acceptance with it your whole life, you would be
a lot of trauma.
Yeah. And maybe that's why Prince Harry ended up doing what he did. Maybe that was his coming to that place of acceptance of, if I'm not going to be the king,
Yeah, my time. I mean,
right.
that's
Yeah.
an educated statement for me to say, but like,
Why not live my life the way I want to then?
yeah, why do I have to follow by all these?
Right.
I'm not even
Because-
because any of the
Right, because even though Margaret wasn't queen, she still had to follow like all these rules and stuff of things that she could do. And, she was in love with this man and could never, this one man that she loved couldn't
that's
marry
so
him
crazy.
because the queen would have had to give her permission, and the people who helped the queen make decisions and things, I mean, you
Like
always
Meghan Markle coming into it, like
coming into it from a place of the way we live.
freedom.
Into that.
I guess I don't know if
Yeah.
freedom is the term,
But
but
that was kind of like that when I was talking about Princess Grace of Monaco.
yeah,
Because she came from, the United States. She was an actress.
yeah,
She was in films with famous people. She was famous. And then to come into a life of the
Change
monarchy
that.
is, that's got to be quite the,
Maybe we should talk about.
I'm not going to have to worry about that.
No, we don't have to worry about royalty. I mean, unless we're Princess Diaries and one of us wakes up and
Right. But you know what? We're royal in our own way.
we're royalty in our family.
We are royalty in our family. That is right. And I do have the name Elizabeth when I am referred to in my proper name.
To the front.
There are times when I probably acted like I should have been queen.
Yeah.
I didn't get my own way or something.
Yeah. I want to talk about becoming a historical figure. Because I think, especially, there's always those sayings about for women, you don't make history being quiet.
Right.
So, like, it takes you to become a historical figure. And I don't mean that like you have to do something big, but you just have to be completely different than most.
And one of the things you have to be is authentic. And you have to be true to yourself, I think.
Yeah.
And you have to know your why. Of why you want to like make change or whatever it is you want to do, because there's so many different types of historical figures. There are musicians, there are poets, there are writers, there are athletes, presidents, obviously, queens, all that kind of thing. But there's so many historical figures, and I think being true to yourself and not being afraid of being first. In that book that I'm reading, I'm almost done with now, called Worthy by Jamie Kern-Lemont, where she talks about you're not crazy, you're just first. Because a lot of times when we want to try something new or something different or something outside of our normal like wheelhouse, and sometimes our family and friends with good intention will be like, oh my gosh, either, you can't do that, or what are you thinking? Or gosh, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I think that's defining character of somebody who makes history is breaking the rules and not listening, basically. Because you don't make history by when your family and people are like, you can't do that. Well, if you just listened, then you missed the whole boat.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And when people think, so a lot of times people say, well, why would you want to do that? But if it's something that, that is your heart's desire or whatever, I mean, it could be art, it could be anything. I mean, there are some artists that become historical figures. There are some artists that don't. But, I really think that when I heard that poem, Not Crazy, I'm Just First.
Yeah.
And sometimes we will often too, she talks about in that book, and I heard her talk on a podcast, is that we'll think, well, I could write a book, but, somebody else kind of wrote a book about something like that. Or, there's already been a movie kind of like that, or the song, but it's like, no, there hasn't, because there's never been a book that you wrote until you wrote it.
Yeah.
That has your voice and your thoughts and your things. And there's never been a song that you wrote. So no matter what, you are the first one to write that song.
Yeah.
You're the first one to write that book. You're the first one to. Yeah. Because there's never been another you, and there's never going to be another you. Yeah. This is making me think. Danielle had suggested a book I read is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And so I started reading that. One of the things that I want to do is talk to my parents a little more, your grandma and grandpa, about the things that our ancestors did that we know of, but the things that they did either creatively or work wise, that kind of a thing. Because she talks about we are all creative beings.
Yes.
And the only way anything ever changed and got done in this world is somebody's creativity.
Yeah.
And that we all, speaking of lineage, we all have a lineage of creativity.
Yes.
Somewhere in our, of whatever you look at. It can either be the arts or it could be, the work wise. I mean, a lot of the work that we do is technically an art.
Yeah.
Probably all.
Well, speaking of going back to your lineage, is that you can connect to the pieces or a little more deep in my soul than this is why I am a rebel or something. Because Grandma told me, and I was so fascinated with maybe that we should all look into the historical figures in our lineage, because Grandma and Grandpa had told me that they came over, were French, I think, mainly, fleeing the Catholics because our, whatever religion we are, bear with me. I can't remember that time period, but we were breaking off from the Catholic Church. And so our family came over fleeing from that. And I just was so fascinated. That's so cool. We had to be a pretty strong type of family to just leave the church and
be brave enough to go to a new country.
And we were being persecuted.
Yeah. I wrote it. One of the things also, just speaking of historical figures, because I don't want to forget this because it'll pop out of my brain in a second, that we are related to John Quincy Adams.
Yes.
The president. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yes.
Because if we're going to talk about historical figures, we might as well talk. And you need some books. John Quincy Adams. Because there's two John Quincy Adams presidents.
Yes. Yeah.
And I should probably read some books. That I'm going to put that on my bucket list of things I'm going to read.
Yeah.
But yes, somewhere in our lineage, there are creative people, actually all the way through our lineage.
Yeah.
There are. And so discovering what some of those things are, or just to recognize the fact that sometimes we'll say, well, I'm not a creative person or whatever. Yeah. And it's not true. We all are. We were created by a creator.
Yeah. Look it up.
Yeah. Did you find what you were?
No, I can't find it.
Okay.
No.
But we can touch on that again in another. But there's some interesting things to look back, on, and like you said, sometimes figuring out where some of our traits come from.
Yeah. Because I could even potentially see how some of them have evolved.
Yeah. Yes, over the years, and where your strengths come from, or just realizing that, every generation of a family really does have a lot of strengths.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're still here, we're still going,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are all historical figures.
We are.
In our own way.
Speaking of, this kind of makes me, when you said we are all historical figures, this is kind of the contrast to that. I seen that. And this is just about just live the life you want to live right now, because when you pass away, you're going to pass away. And 10 years after that, it will be you didn't even exist, really. Other than maybe the couple people in your family. 10, 20. It's just such a short
time or whatever.
I can see time afterwards.
Unless you do end up being a
Nelson Mandela,
a famous historical figure or something like that, where,
Yeah.
But one of the things like this, even a podcast or music, anytime that you're recorded, or your voice is recorded, or your music is recorded, or something like that, that is a way that we can probably live on past our, what might be a normal legacy, because somebody come across something,
But it should just be a push to just record the podcast.
Right. It should
Just
be a
do it.
push to just do whatever,
Just do
because
it.
why do we care what other people think?
Yeah.
Why?
Historical figures did not care.
They
Because
did not
that would
care.
be-
They just kept doing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't care. We can't care so much. We have to do it. And it's not that deep.
It's not that deep.
Because
The teenagers know it's not that deep. Well,
Yeah.
most of them, some of them, have their deep
it's
moments. But another thing in that book, that big magic, is like how the idea of thoughts, or the idea of ideas are like looking for an open vessel to bring them
Yeah.
to life in the world, and that how, if you have this thing that's like nudging you or over and over again,
Yeah.
like, I should do that, that, or you feel inspiration that if it keeps at you, that maybe you're the vessel. But sometimes maybe not, but if you don't pay attention to it and you don't do something with it, that idea is going to move on to the next. And when I read that, because I have felt that way in my life before,
Yeah.
that, oh man, I thought of that, or,
Well, it just proves like the life isn't, as much as life is random, it's not so random.
right.
Like
Right.
there's so much, those creative thoughts come from somewhere.
Right.
And like,
Yeah.
you have to do something.
Right. Yeah.
And if it's bothering you, it's a good sign.
Yeah.
There's something, even with a negative thing, if it's bothering you, there's a reason. It's something it's trying to leave you, or
Right. Yeah.
something that's pushing you is trying to push you for a reason and like into something else.
That's because sometimes we are saying yes to an idea that really isn't our idea, shouldn't be our idea. It really belongs to somebody else. And so when we let it go, when she was talking about that book that she was going to write, and that how she had to step away from it, and another person wrote the book, and they met each other. And when they both talked about this book they wanted to write, it had so many similarities and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool to think of, that there are ideas and thoughts, and some of those go to more than one person, because she talks about how, it could be two different people on different sides of the world who actually come up kind of with the same idea around the same time. But yeah, interesting. Yeah. And you know what else is interesting is I can't remember where I read this. I think it was on Facebook. So factual, not factual, I don't know. But I think it was talking about Albert Einstein. I don't know if he was married more than once. I can't remember. But anyway, the people who were part of their creativeness and their inspiration, who never really get the recognition because, the person gets it. But oftentimes there's people who are really part of, and probably a bigger part of, which is true, I think, in some of those, like the Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth, and, that it depends on how much you let other people in. To collaborate, I guess, on things. But not everybody gets the recognition, and not everybody needs the recognition. Some people don't need that and don't want that. And most of the time, I don't know what the percentage would be. There are some historical figures who they weren't doing what they were doing for notoriety or to be a historical figure. They were doing what they felt was the right thing for human race.
They just listened to the creativity.
Right.
They just listened.
Right. Or you think Rosa Parks. I mean, she didn't not get up out of her seat that day on the bus. Thinking, I'm going to become a historical figure. She just did it because, you know what?
Enough.
I had enough.
I'm
not going to live by your rules anymore. And so
there's got to be a little room to be creative. You have to color outside the lines.
Yes.
Because nobody ever made history just doing the same old thing.
Right.
They didn't.
You
become famous.
Right.
Make an impact on the world by sitting still.
And sometimes some of those people, they didn't reach notoriety or become a historical figure until they were dead.
Yeah,
they didn't
yeah.
even know.
And not all historical
But-
figures are good.
Right.
Um,
We didn't even go there.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like,
Hmm. Yeah. That's one of those things where, you know what? There's certain historical figures that we need to learn from
yeah.
in order for our human race to
Yeah.
survive. The things that we don't, I don't know. To me, I get baffled by that.
Yeah, that way.
Yeah, just
I can't
how
believe
you could feel that you could follow somebody that would do such atrocities.
Yeah.
Um,
But a lot of people,
yeah,
because I go back to that family.
Yeah.
First to be like,
yeah. And sometimes I think about, in some countries, kind of like that movie I was watching the other night. I mean, they raise kids from such a young age to be warriors and
Mhm.
soldiers, and
yeah,
they take them in because they don't have family, or a lot of times that's what happens is they don't have family, they need food, they need a tribe, they need, it's kind of how gang, I think
need to feel
a part
welcome
of
and
something, and they grow up being taught hatred,
Yeah, and they don't know.
and that's all they know. And yeah, but sometimes it just takes. In that movie I watched, it took somebody like triggering a memory for this man in this movie to remember back to before he was a hateful,
Oh yeah.
angry person,
Mhm.
and kind of back to what happened to kickstart that. He was led to do the right thing at a certain point. So yeah, lots of good things to learn from different historical figures.
Yeah, good.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So on my bucket list, and learn about my relative John Quincy Adams a little more.
Yeah. I've been like looking into both sides, and I think it's kind of weird. This is really random and off topic, but I'm really a tan person, and I think maybe it was my dad's dad, but like my grandma came from France too, Paris, and then grandma and grandpa came. So I was like, why? How did I get so tan?
Your dad's pretty
Because that
tan,
doesn't.
too. So
So I gotta figure out where the
figure out
comes from.
figure out our own historicalness. I think there's a good
It's good
lesson to be found there.
Yeah, because you can learn a lot about your family, trauma, good things like religion, the food you like, and maybe even get back to some of that stuff because it's so cool. And I like because Grandpa has all of our lineage stuff, and he has pictures, and you can even look at like pictures of when they came over here, and that's kind of how we all started. Because some people would change the spelling of their last name, some people didn't want to be associated with their family, so they changed everything, and you can't even find what like.
Or they came over here and they didn't know how to spell the name, and so the name got spelled differently, and that's what it was going forward. There's that TV show that's on PBS called Roots, where the guy, usually I think it's he does it with famous people, but he goes and figures out some of their lineage in it, and not necessarily, I don't think, maybe just famous people, but and finds out some things about them for them, and that's kind of interesting.
That would be interesting.
So learn maybe something about your history, figure out, bring your creativity alive, and I don't know, we're all historical figures in our own way.
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe you should be the historical figure.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Because here we are.
Here we are.
Becoming historical figures.
We are.
In our family, that was story.
We are legends in our own minds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, that was good.
It was.
It was good.
Don't follow the rules.
Yeah. Don't follow the rules. Maybe you'll make history in some form or fashion. We're so glad that you were here with us.
Yes, thank you.
And look forward to you tuning in again next time.
Never know what'll be on the episode.
You never know what we're going to talk about, because anything is possible.
Yes.
So, all right.
Okay.
Okay, we done?
Sounds good.
All right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.